Hey, gang, today's pre-show has been a bit of a scramble because I was parsing my notes and thinking about what I wanted to say about President Trump's speech last night to the nation in the 9 o'clock hour, which I watched. And in the midst of my thinking and evaluation and note-taking and so forth early this morning, boom, comes a massive New York Times story, two-person byline under the headline, How Epstein and Trump Bonded Over the Pursuit of Women. I'm kind of surprised as I'm speaking and as I'm monitoring the cable outlets that the media are not yet on this story, but they will be. It'll dominate the news cycle today, I think. And now I understand why the president was so, I think I understand why he was so hurried, why he wanted to give that speech, and why he was so seemingly agitated. I think it was an anticipatory move by him so that we'd be talking about his speech today and not because they surely at the White House knew this was coming. But I don't think they'll be successful, meaning I don't think the White House will be successful in burying the Times. I'll talk a lot more about that on radio today. We had a lot of voting yesterday, huge voting, 37,803 on the Wednesday poll question. Are President Trump's comments about Rob Reiner a new low? 86.81% said yes, 13.19% said no. Today's poll question, I'm sure the voting will not be as high as yesterday, and I'm okay with that. It requires some explanation. It requires some analysis, but it's a really interesting issue, at least to me. Should British police arrest protesters who chant globalize the Intifada? No, it is not a hypothetical. And I continue to monitor, the big three stories, the tragic three stories from last weekend, the slaying of Rob and Michelle Reiner, the shooting at Brown University, which as I speak to you remains unsolved inexplicably. We'll talk about that on radio today. And of course, the hate crime that was perpetrated against Jews at Bondi Beach in Australia. And from the Sydney Morning Herald today, I saw this gorgeous picture of Matilda. Matilda the bumblebee. Yeah, there she is. Matilda the bumblebee who loved dancing. Matilda whose last moments were filled with animals in a petting zoo. Matilda the 10-year-old who was shot dead on Bondi Beach by a man on a bridge firing indiscriminately at Jews. On Thursday, her parents, Michael and Valia, had to somehow make sense of the impossible, the murder of a little girl so beloved by her classmates at La Perouse Public School that they gave her an indigenous nickname, Worry Worry, a little ray of sunshine. Such a sad, sad story. More on Australia and anti-Semitism globally in just a moment. Thank you to my friends at Play Gun Lake and Parks Casino for allowing me to do what I do on YouTube each and every day. There's another way for you to win on the Bet Parks and Play Gun Lake apps. Do what I have done. Make your downtime fun time playing your favorite casino games and betting on sports right on your phone with the Bet Parks online casino and sportsbook app and the Play Gun Lake Casino. There's so much to bet on these days, and just in terms of football. And there's a lot more than football available at Play Gun Lake and at Bet Parks. But the college playoff picture, the ending of the pro season and what's to come, it's a real fun time, and there's going to be a lot of great action next week during Christmas week. Download the app and get a $50 casino bonus on the new slot game that everybody is talking about. It's called Huff and Lots of Puff. Huff and Lots of Puff. You can also get up to $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. Got to be 21 and in PA, New Jersey, or Maryland for Bet Parks, and 21 and in Michigan for Play Gun Lake. Your casino bonus has to be wagered. BetParks.com, PlayGunLake.com. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay, back to Australia. Prime Minister Albanese, I have this story from the Sydney Daily Herald today, now saying he's going to crack down on anti-Semitism. Angry about the Bondi massacre and almost contrite, Anthony Albanese has laid out a top-to-bottom plan to make the country safe again for Australian Jews. He finally stepped up to the plate in Canberra on Thursday after days of criticism from Jewish leaders and the coalition that he had not taken anti-Semitism seriously. So further along in that story, I found interesting, it said, asked why he had not been at victims' funerals, Albanese said that he respected the wishes of the families. Suggesting what? They told him they didn't want him there. So what exactly are they going to do? There's a 5-point plan. It includes an aggravated hate speech offense for preachers and leaders who promote violence, increased penalties for hate speech promoting violence, and making hate an aggregating factor in sentencing crimes for online threats and harassment. So you get it, right? In Australia, they're struggling now with what do we do to prevent another Bondi massacre? What do we do to try and rein in, stamp out the anti-Semitism that has become so prevalent? Well, here's a solution. Let's look to the UK. In the UK, this is from the New York Times, in the UK, they are now saying that 2 of the largest police forces in the UK will arrest protesters who use the phrase globalize the Intifada. Isn't that interesting? Palestinians and their supporters have said the phrase is a rallying cry for liberation. Many Jews consider it a call to violence, invoking uprisings of the 80s and 2000s in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. The literal translation of Intifada is shaking off. But the common accepted, at least by Jews and by yours truly, is one of wanting to desire to wipe out Israel, that there should be no Israel. That, to me, is what Intifada means. I was in Israel in the midst of the second Intifada. I think it was 2004. So that expression resonates with me. Britain's chief rabbi, Ephraim Mervis, whose cousin was at the Hanukkah celebration targeted by gunmen in Sydney, told the BBC this week that he believed the chant globalized the Intifada and other phrases incited violence. And you will, of course, remember that the phrase was kind of an albatross, although he was successful, to Zoran Mamdani. Because when he was a mayoral candidate back in June, I think it was in a podcast, he refused to condemn that expression. Further along in that Times story, now, in the escalating threat context, we will recalibrate to be more assertive. This is a statement from the Metropolitan Police Commissioner Mark Rowley and Stephen Watson, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester. Violent acts have taken place, the context has changed, words have meaning, and they have consequence. They said that anybody chanting globalize the Intifada or displaying it on a placard, either at a protest or in a targeted way, should expect to be arrested. Well, lo and behold, last night in London, it happened. So now I'm looking at coverage from the Standard in the UK, and here's what it says. The Metropolitan Police have arrested 4 people at a central London pro-Palestine rally on suspicion of racially aggravated public order offenses for shouting slogans involving calls for Intifada. So, as a means of combating anti-Semitism in the UK, they're struggling with what to do in Australia. They're talking about clamping down on speech. Will they take a page from their former motherland and now arrest people for chanting globalize the Intifada? And could that happen here? No, is the short answer. I mean, I could see the Trump administration wanting to do that, but what differentiates the United States and the United Kingdom is we have a First Amendment and they do not. And hate speech in the United States is protected. It's the Brandenburg case, right? It's a line of cases that go back to Brandenburg in 1969. So the United Kingdom doesn't have a First Amendment. There's not an absolute, a constitutional guarantee of free speech. How do things work across the pond? Parliament is sovereign. Speech rights exist only so far as Parliament allows them. Britain relies on a balancing test under the European Convention on Human Rights, which protects expression in theory, but allows it to be restricted in the name of public safety, preventing disorder or protecting the rights of others. So British law criminalizes speech that is threatening, that is abusive, or likely to stir up racial or religious hatred. In other words, the Brits are allowed to look at a slogan, consider how people hear it, consider the climate we're in, and say, this now poses a risk, which is what Albanese, the prime minister in Australia, said they're going to now do. But this is where we diverge from our forefathers, because under the First Amendment, arresting someone solely for chanting, globalize the Intifada, would almost certainly be unconstitutional. As I say, it was Brandenburg versus Ohio. That's the Supreme Court case that draws the modern First Amendment line. It says that the government can punish speech only if it's intended to incite imminent, I think that's the key word in this case, imminent lawless action. If you're chanting on Fifth Avenue in Midtown Manhattan, globalize the Intifada, are you intending to incite imminent lawless action? I don't think that a court in the United States, I don't think the Supreme Court in the United States would say that that you are. So chanting globalize the Intifada, however charged or ugly it may sound, I don't think it meets the standard under the U.S. It's abstract, it's ideological, it doesn't tell anybody, who to attack, when to attack, how to attack. So it wouldn't pass constitutional muster. But nevertheless, I think it makes for a really interesting conversation and a great poll question. Should the Brits arrest protesters who chant, globalize the Intifada? When I decided yesterday that this would be the poll question, it was in the realm of theoretical or abstract. The Brits were saying they were going to do it, but last night they actually did it. Try and put aside your First Amendment thinking. I felt obliged to reference Brandenburg, but put that aside when you answer the poll question. Just give me a gut check. Do you like the idea of the Brits arresting people who chant those words? Couldn't happen here, I don't think. But tell me what you think about the Brits doing exactly that. When only 131 people had voted, and many more now have voted, but it was running 70-30. I'm not going to tell you which way, but it was running 70-30. Go vote at Smerconish.com, and please make sure if you're listening to the podcast, we thank you for that, but watch on YouTube. Become a subscriber to my YouTube channel. It costs you nothing. Even better, set yourself up for notifications, and anytime I'm delivering content on YouTube from our gorgeous new studio, you will be notified. Okay? See you on radio.